in Africa? Well, let's talk about it. There it is. Make sure that you subscribe, like, share, follow the whole nine. We have crossed over, we just had the announcement, we've crossed over 8,000 subscribers to this channel, and we are on our way to 9,000 and beyond. And so I want to thank everybody who follows, who chimes in. We are multi-continental. Let me say that. We have folks in Australia, we have folks in Europe, we have folks, of course, on the continent of Africa. We have folks in North America who are tuning in and paying attention to what we're talking about. And I think that is so cool because for many years, my sphere was a United States domestic sphere. And I thought I was doing the daggone thing if I was, doing it in America. But for real, that when you find out that there's so many smart, fascinating people around the world, when you get out of that American colonialism and that American superiority and that whole thing that takes place. And that's one of the reasons why I simply tell the truth. That's kind of like how I got this started, is as far as talking about telling the truth about what I see when it comes to Africa. And I'm not one to romanticize Africa, meaning all 54 countries. I know that Africa is not Wakanda. I know that Africa is not Zamunda. And so unfortunately, when that whole, because like I said, one of my favorite movies is Coming to America. And I enjoyed Black Panther as well. But what those movies did was, I believe, etched in people's minds a romanticized vision of Africa. And it didn't do the continent justice, although it brought awareness to the continent, made it cool. But then I think on some levels, we got to be careful that those movies don't actually end up exploiting the continent again. So it's kind of like, again, everything I talk about is like double-edged, because there's a benefit to it, but then there's another side to it that oftentimes is not discussed. And so it'd be good to see some of those resources that come from those movies, dispersed throughout the continent. But then someone might argue and say, well, it brings a positive light on the continent. Now more people are interested in it. So like I said, it's double-edged. You can kind of go both ways with it. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is just one of the reasons why I simply tell the truth about what I see in Africa on both sides. So I talk about, my goal is ultimately to highlight the many positive aspects of the continent, but then at the same time, sometimes if you're not careful, you can actually gloss over some other areas that might need to be addressed. And I think that's when a lot of our dialogue can become disingenuous, because we are not giving the most accurate portrayal of it. So again, people romanticize a lot of times. People in America, I got to get out of America. I got to get out of America, and then they run into Africa, but they don't even really know what they're running to. It's like, I got to get away from Trump, and I got to get away from these racists, and I got to get away from all this other stuff. But then they don't consider the other aspect of it, of classism. I'm a rerun a talk that I did last year about classism versus racism, because when people run into classism transcends ethnicities. So you can have Black folks with classism. And I was talking to, I can't wait for you all to see the interview with two young ladies, 21 and 26, and they were talking about their experience on the continent and how they felt as though people saw them as money, just didn't care about them coming here to visit or whatever, just kind of saw them as money. And I just explained to them, I said, well, their perspective, they don't really know our story. because they're not taught our story. It's not emphasized. And we shouldn't expect them to know our story, really, because it's a different continent, these are different countries. Although the education system is European, we see how the European education system doesn't want to teach us about ourselves. So why in the world would they place an emphasis on teaching other places that they colonized about us? So as we kind of walked that down, they understood what was happening. That's why it's so important for us to take our own education into our own hands, tell our own stories, people come see for themselves, and get over all of this fear that we have. It's deep. I used to have it. I understand it. That's why I keep talking about it. That's why I create content to show people what's really going on so they can see it with their own eyes and say, oh, wow, that's not what I was expecting to see. And once I hope, and this is not, and please understand, this is not just Black folks who's had their minds messed up. It's white folks got their minds just as messed up as the Black folks, because the same game is played. Because if you're going to implement a system, you have to make sure that all players play their part in it. And so if you have broad ignorance across the board of people believing things, and then you have teachers who are culturally insensitive and don't understand, let's say, for example, you have a teacher from a different ethnic group who's teaching a majority of students from one ethnic group, but yet that teacher is not ethnically trained or culturally mature, then they just kind of reinforce that same narrative. That's why you see some of the stuff happening in Texas and Florida and down south. But it's not just there. You see it happening all throughout the world. You see it even here in Africa, where certain school systems are not teaching certain curriculums, because that's how you keep things in place. You keep ignorance going, and then people, and in the best form of keeping it going is when you have the people that reinforce it upon themselves. And that's what I see happening, us reinforcing it upon ourselves. And so tonight I went to go get me some Jollof downstairs, and I was talking to a young lady. She said her name was Princess. And I said, what's your name? I always go back to this. What's your name? She said, oh, well, you mean my traditional name? I said, yeah, that's what I want to know. And I said, I want to hear the colonized name. I said, I got enough colonized name for everybody. So she said her name was Barilele. And she said, so I said, well, I kind of looked at her, I was talking. I said, so are you from Ghana? She said, no, I'm from Nigeria. So I'm meeting a whole bunch of people from Nigeria and Ghana. Something going on. I seem like I meet more Nigerians in Ghana than I am Ghanaians. But that's not true. But I meet a lot of Nigerians here. I met 3 or 4 or 5 Nigerians in the past couple of days. So we were talking, and I said, well, this is our story, because and people tread lightly, but I've been accused of being a slow walker. I'm real patient, and I can walk things down real slow. And so I was trying to get to the core of the conversation. And so I was explaining to her our story, and I have no problem. I'm not ashamed of our story, because I was talking about genetics and have a lot of Nigerian DNA, and then really we're talking about the borders of these countries and how these countries were basically made up. So whenever I hear people arguing over which country's better than the other, I'm saying that's just a play out of the colonizer book, because the countries didn't even exist until the colonizer came along and established the borders and gave them names. So when we sit up there and say, yeah, I'm fighting for my country and this, that, and the other, it's just another form of colonization that is still reinforcing itself to bring division. So when I hear Ghanaians arguing with Nigerians and South Africans and Congo and all of that, all of these places, meaning the borders, were created by the colonizers. And so when we fight, we're fighting each other based upon what the colonizer established. And in the meantime, the colonizers are coming in and buying everything up and building everything and creating their paradises and their little utopias and their other little places where they vacation, while in the meantime, the African Americans sitting over in America on an American plantation, scared to come back to Africa, because that's another border that's been established, psychological border, because they're scared and something's going to happen to them, and they think. Then we spend all of our time watching TV and caught up into entertainment, and it's just these mind games that are played. And I mean, I'm telling you, in my feed and my timeline, and some of the little silly statements that come through. And sometimes, when people drop little silly things in there, sometimes, I fire back some little, I fire back a little something, just to because I'm bored. So I'm bored. I'm like, let me pick what this person says they want to cover something. Let me pick back, you know. So sometimes I can be petty too. I got a little petty with me too. So, so, we were having this conversation, and the, as I was explaining to her our story, she was like, "Wow." She said, "Yeah, I heard something about like the identity, and then a lot of African Americans come back to kind of find identity." She said, "But when we went to school, when we would go to the dungeons, it was just like a field trip to us. We didn't even know." This was the Nigerian girl told me. She said, "We didn't know all of that stuff happened. And we just went to the dungeons because it was a field trip." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Our story is very similar to the story of South Africans." I said, because they had Mandela, we had MLK, they had I think it's Tambo. I think his name is Tambo, and then Tambo would be kind of like a uh, Jesse Jackson, Andy Young type person. So I'm just trying to give you parallels. And but for real, I said, in America, many Black Americans have been fed this notion that we are superior, that we are, and we've adopted that from the colonizer. So our minds, and I say, but when I come here to Africa and I see the justices and the lawyers and stuff up in these black courts with these white wigs on, I said something didn't click. They hollering about get rid of the colonizer, but they're still putting on the colonizers little wigs, like the lawyers and stuff, and they do the little European thing and had little wigs on and stuff. And I'm saying something is off. So then she was saying how in Nigeria, she was talking about how so many of the Nigerian parents and Nigerian culture, they aspire to be European. And she said, it's like they stayed here on the continent, but it's like they still want to be like the Europeans. It's like, I said, well, you got that same problem over in America too. I said, yes. I said, this thing is real deep. I said, but now here's the good thing about what's happening with a lot of African Americans is that a lot of us are waking up and figuring out what happened, and we're becoming very vocal. I said, one thing about us is that we are a very vocal bunch, and we got a little bit of money. And so you got some of us who got a bunch of money and still caught up in wanting to be European. And then others of us who are like, listen, but now here's the real interesting part about it is that you got like Europeans saying that the stuff that's happened is foul. And they're trying to, correct a lot of the stuff that has gone wrong over the years. So that's a good thing to see. And sometimes, this is what's really interesting, sometimes you'll have Europeans fighting harder to break the grips of colonization than you will have African Americans or even Africans. So that's, like I said, this thing gets real twisted and convoluted, and it's really kind of a warped kind of thing that's happening. But little by little, people are understanding the impact of it. And anytime somebody comes to me and says, that's old news, let it go, that's old news, don't talk about it anymore, that's indicative of a colonized mind. That's a mind that is delusional. That's a mind that is lacking in some form of education. That is a mind that needs to be decolonized, because you can see the effects on an economic level, and you can see the effects on a class level. And let's take race and ethnicity and let's take all of that out of it. Let's just throw that to the side. Let's look at class and economics. And that's going to tell you everything, because that is when you start looking at it from that level, now a very, very clear picture begins to be told. And then as I was riding around, and I shared earlier today how you see all of this development happening. And when you begin to see all of this development happening, you recognize that there are opportunities in places where they tell you there's no opportunities. And that's what I'm saying. If this place was so bad, then why is there so much construction? Why are people coming to West Africa to find their dream? If this place is so bad, why? And that's the thing those who are in the African diaspora would want to stop and ask themselves and think for a second. If it's so bad, why is all of this happening? And again, it goes back to understanding world history. It goes back to understanding not just world history, but just local. I mean, local history. Just even look in your own backyard, your own neighborhood, and begin to understand some things. So what I wanted, and that's just another reason why I just tell the truth about what I see. Some people wonder, well, is everything all good? Well, no, everything is not all good. I mean, I shared in one of my videos. One of the things I don't like about Ghana is these little, little jive police shakedowns that they have out here. It's like, borderline bribe situations and stuff like that. That's something I don't particularly care for. I have not experienced people mistreating me or whatever. I haven't experienced any of that or anyone disliking me. Everybody's actually been very nice. I mean, in every country I've been in, it's. I mean, the only problem I've had is like with the little phony police shakedowns. I guess they get their rocks off trying to feel powerful or whatever because they might not have no power at home. I don't know. Maybe that's the system that they have. I don't know what the situation is, but that is the only thing that I can. And even like the price gouging and all of that, I know how to handle that. So I don't take it personally. I understand if you gonna shoot your shot, you're gonna try to shoot your shot and see what you can get. And if you got an O'Brony that's coming through there as a rookie, hey, we're dealing with money and capitalism or whatever. You got to get what you got to get. You got to do what you got to do. And so that's what, that's how the game is played. I can handle that. I'm a big boy. I can handle that side of it. So, but outside of that, I mean, I would have spent by the time because we got a tour coming in, folks starting to come in tomorrow, which I'm excited about. It'll be tour number three during these times, 3 in Ghana. So, and wrapped up one a couple of weeks ago, and looking forward to this one. And got some real cool people coming on this one. I mean, every tour we got cool people, but each tour, you just have different cool people. So this one has a different group of cool people. I'm looking forward to being able to show and lead them through this experience. But there is one warning I do have for my folks anywhere in Africa. There's one warning I have for you. And this warning, I believe you might dismiss it when I say it initially. Because a lot of times people dismiss it when I say this because they say, oh no, we don't have this problem. Oh no, we don't do that here. Oh no, and I'm saying human beings are human beings everywhere. So if you got beggars in Niger, you got beggars in Ghana. If you got beggars in Ghana, you got beggars in America. So there's no, maybe your ethnic group doesn't beg, but somebody else's does. So there's beggars everywhere. So what I want to warn Africa about, this is the slavery that is infecting America. It has made not just Black folks, but white folks, Hispanic folks, Asian folks, anybody who signs up for them, they become the slaves to them. And it's called student loans. Now, I've had this conversation with Africans in different countries, and they say, oh no, we don't do that here because, and I say to them, oh yes, they do that here because they have advertisements for it. And so when you understand the ways of economics and how things work, they creep things on you slowly. They make them normal slowly. And so what a student loan will do to Africa will make another batch of slaves, just like you have a batch of slaves, regardless of ethnicity, in America. Unfortunately, whoever's at the lower end of the economic spectrum is the one who is hurt the most. So this is what I say to my African brothers and sisters: when they bring that mess your way, don't sign up for them. Because what they do in America, they tell you the only way that you're going to be successful is if you have this piece of paper, and then they say, we're going to charge you this amount for it. Most people in America don't approach it with a business mindset, the return on their investment. They're going at it with emotion. And once they get caught up with the emotion, they find themselves in a 20 to 25 or longer trap, which impacts their financial capacity and in many cases takes them out of the ability to make certain investments, to purchase homes. In some cases, they can't even survive because they take on these loans that are, you can't bankrupt them. Or I think in South Africa, they call it something else. But if you don't pay them, you go on the blacklist in South Africa. So if you don't have those rands to pay for them, then it's going to be a situation. But that is what is coming to the continent of Africa. You have to understand that Africa has been exploited for hundreds of years. The exploitations have not stopped. That's the one thing I see as I drive around. I see financial exploitations. I see psychological exploitations. I see religious exploitations. I see human exploitations when I ride around, and I see where people's minds have been. It's almost like a spell, if you will. And the same thing is in America. So just understand, anything I'm seeing here, I see in America too. It's just that in America, it's just like you try to tell folks, and they just totally dismiss you because they think they're smart and got a little education, and so you can't tell them anything. When you come here, you see that it's like cultural. So it's like people don't know any better. And so that I was talking to my buddy Ron, and I think it's going foggy right there. What's going on? Okay. All right. Get closer. Okay. And so he has a powerful message with his organization. And I was asking him, I said, well, are you going to say something? How do you address your message with this particular audience? Because your message is really kind of counter what they're talking about. And he was like, yeah, this is kind of interesting here. This is a little different. And so when you come into these environments and you try to show people the oppression or what someone is doing to them, if they've been in it for so long, then it's hard for them to see that, oh, wow, somebody's playing games with me. Somebody's really befriending me, but they're doing it from an angle of manipulation or exploitation. And the one thing I was telling the young lady from Nigeria, I was telling her, I said, one of the reasons why so many African Americans are so vocal is because when our ancestors came out of slavery, that was like 150 years ago. I said many African countries are just coming out to independence, which is really a form of releasing of slavery, a little over 60 years ago. I said, so that you're talking about almost like 100-year gap where you have one group of people who've been fighting against these systems and dealing with this versus 60-year difference. I said, so it's going to take a little bit of time. I said, but the more and more we keep talking about it, and the more and more we keep explaining to people what happened, like the smart people are going to get it. They're going to say, I got it. I see what's happening. And then they're going to recognize different things, and they want to replay in their minds the things that they were taught by their elders that might have come from the mouth of, say, someone who was trying to exploit them. And that could be on, again, let's throw ethnicity out of it. It could just simply be financial. Because if you see a group of people who they don't know any better and they don't know any way to break out of these systems, then they just go with the flow. I mean, I think back to things that my grandparents did not know to teach me. They didn't even understand it to teach me because they grew up in the early 1920s. So there were certain things they just didn't know in Somerville, South Carolina. And then, I think back, my mother is really, really sharp. So my mother is really sharp because we have conversations now we probably should have had when I was like 12 years old. So I'm like, wonder, you do all this stuff and you didn't say anything. So, but she's really smart. But again, to that generation, sometimes in their effort to protect us or to shield us, they didn't teach us certain things that we needed to know. And so that's why I think it's important for us to have these conversations to help people understand exactly what's going on. And that's why I come here to say, hey, listen, in Africa, please, please, please don't mess with those student loans, those school fees. If it takes you extra time to go to finish, to do what you need to do, please do that and research the major that you're taking out. Because again, social pressure will tell you, You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And then they're not thinking about, well, what if I can get a job after this? What's going to happen if I take out these school fee loans and then I can't get a job? What's the next step for me? Tell me what my life looks like after that. Or you have social pressure because everybody's trying to, they're taking the European education system as the standard for education. Now, let me hear what I said very quickly. Rewind that again. Let me rewind that again. We're taking the European education system that has been imposed on the people in Africa. Of course, it's been imposed on the people in America. And now we're using that as the standard. But we're not considering the cost. And as we don't consider the cost, we get caught in these traps. And then the next thing you know, financially, we're still struggling, trying to come up. That's why I was talking to one young lady today. I mean, I've been having some good conversations lately. She runs a shea butter business based out of Northern Ghana, but she lives in Richmond, Virginia. And what she said to me, she said that she won the Visa lottery to go to, I'm going to interview her when I go back to the States. I'm going to interview her. She won the Visa lottery to go attend school in the United States. She said, I didn't know she was going to say this. I said, so tell me your journey. She said, well, when I got there, she said, I went to community college for 2 years, and then I transferred, and I think she went to UVA, University of Virginia. I said, really? She said, yeah. And I said, now, like Black folks in America looking down on community college, they thinking they too refined for that. She's like, I didn't have any money. I had to figure it out. And I was like, well, I guess she said, my parents didn't have it. And I said, well, you graduated from UVA? She said, yeah. And so she's able to come out without a boatload of loans and all that other kind of stuff. But you got Black folks in America with the ego coming out the ego and student loans out the wazoo. Student loans they'll never be able to pay off. I mean, student loans, they got student loans on 3-4 kids. They're so enslaved right now that, and so, but they would look down on her. And I make a point to say how our minds get so twisted. Instead of commending her for making a wise financial move, they would look down on her because she went to community college for 2 years and then transferred and got the same degree that their child got from UVA, but she doesn't have all of the debt. But they would look down on her because she opted to go to community college. Now, if somebody has the money or whatever, then that's a totally different story. We're not talking about people who have the money and the means to do it. We're talking about people who have become the new age slaves because now they can't make moves because when they try to buy a home, the debt to income ratio is so high. They're in their mid 40s, late 40s, 50s, carrying $200,000 worth of student loans that they'll never pay off. Never pay them off. I don't know how many CDs you do that times 5.7. You're talking about a couple million CDs worth of student school fees. Can you imagine that? Think about how you're gonna pay that off. What you gonna have to do to pay that off? And that's what they're trying to bring to the continent of Africa. And you have all these other little things going on that just are behind the scenes economically that are designed. And when people have been conditioned to be subservient on all these different levels, never should they say anything. They should just go with the flow. And they use education, they use government, they use religion, they use all these things. And that's what I think resonates, when I come here. Now, I hear it come out of the mouths of African Americans, and I see it show up in a different kind of behavior. And then like when I come here and I see like the little jackleg preachers and all this other kind of, you got jackleg preachers in America. And I'm gonna break this down because I know when I go here, it might seem kind of like it's a gripe or something like that. It's not a gripe. It's the fact that I spent more than 20 some odd years in the church world, been around all the preachers, been in that world, seen, served, worked, did it, all of that, been there, done that. And when you step back for a second from a systemic standpoint and you look, you begin to see things. You got the little preachers with the billboards up all over town and all of that's going on. And really, this has nothing to do with God. It's had everything to do with them. I mean, really, when you really get to the core of it, it goes back to money. You know what I'm saying? That's the bottom line. It goes back to money. You take the money out of it, the preachers are gone. They're going to run up out of there so fast you wouldn't even know what happened. You don't believe me? Take the money away and see what happens. So when I got more respect for the guys on the street preachers. They got the little speakers and stuff, and they go. One dude, he over here where I'm staying every morning, Sunday mornings, he'd get up and start doing this preaching and stuff. I was like, you know what, that brother out there with he out there with a microphone and everything. He doing this thing. Hey, it is what it is. But when you see how this stuff impacts people, and when you see the financial, and then because I'm just a practical person, you know, I'm practical. I can just look. So the scripture says, "Judge a tree by the fruit that it bears." I'm just going to sit back and look at the fruit falling from the tree, and saying, "Okay, so you telling me to judge a tree by the fruit that it bears?" And I'm looking at all of this. I'm looking at the education system. I'm looking at the attitudes of the people. I'm looking at how people treat each other. I'm looking at all of this. And I'm formulating a conclusion just based upon just looking, just observing, and saying, now what's going on here? But then in some of our cultures, if you do that, then people looking at you sideways because you're just saying, well, you telling me that's a fig on the tree, but really that's an apple. But you want me to believe that it's a fig. And I can't believe that it's a fig when I see, or whatever I just said, how I said it. I can't believe that it's something that it's not, but you want me to believe that it is. And so I see that happening on both sides. And I see that as a result of what has happened on those from those different systems and their influence. So again, financial, educational, religious, and we have to take it psychological. And you see this thing at work, and then it's like people look at you weird when you begin to challenge what they're doing. Say, tell me how this is working. Well, my grandmama did it. It was good enough for my grandmama, and it worked for her. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm not sure it really worked for your grandmama, because I'm looking at how things shook out with the whole. I saw the story from when I came in to when it ended, and I'm not sure that's necessarily how. I'm not sure that's what she was anticipating. You know, I don't know. You know, so I'm looking at this, and what I'm saying to everybody is that when you begin to start, just stop for a second and pay attention. That's all I'm trying to get people to do. Get all of these voices out of your mind and just stop and look. And for people who discern, that's when it's time to operate in that gifting, if you will, to stop and say, wait a minute. Why is it that these same things are happening all around the world to this particular group of people? Now, some people will say because it's spiritual and there's a curse that's been inflicted, and okay, so we can go with that. Let's say that's what it is. And so then we go to, let's start working towards the different solutions to solve this problem. You look and you say, okay, well, why is it that these particular games, why do we fall for these particular games? What is it in us that keeps falling for this same trick every single time? And for me, I got tired of falling for the same trick. Like, somebody can't come to me and say, well, okay, there's a black politician, and that black politician that's it. No, my thing is, black or white, let me see the fruit falling from the tree. Because if you're going to have a whole board of people that look like me, but then the results are piss poor at best, or it's the same routine over and over. And some things don't take rocket science to be able to teach children certain things, but then you have to fight to get them to teach them common sense things, just to say, this is how you manage your money. You're telling me to go to school so I can get a good job, but you're not going to equip me to be able to teach me how to effectively manage my money until 2021, when finally there's some sort of curriculums that are coming through, but you have generations of people who have gone through and are considered to be highly educated, but are very poor with their finances. That's not rocket science, y'all. That's something that's very, very, very simple to stop and say, wait a minute. The same way you emphasize that I learned about Christopher Columbus and George Washington and so-called founding fathers, you could have placed that same emphasis in these public schools paid for with supposed tax dollars. You could have placed that same emphasis on making sure I understood what credit was and how credit worked and how to open a bank account and how to do this and how to do that and how to invest, how to avoid predatory lending traps. But instead, those things were largely omitted, or sometimes they would do them symbolically just so in case somebody said something, they could say, well, it offered in home economics. But I know people with multiple degrees struggling in their finances. I know people with multiple degrees come to the end of their careers and they don't have any money saved or minimal money saved, or they're trying to figure out what happened. I'll never forget in 2012, after I was teaching my debt-free college degree seminar, I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Shout out to my man, Kamani Wright, repping GDS and Wilson. And she's 65 years old. She said, I've been a school teacher for 40 years. She said, I retired. This is what she said, a school teacher, 40 years. She said, I retired. She said, my colleagues and I, we figured out right after that we had to go back to work. We had to go back to work. And she said, something went wrong. They did not prepare us. And now some people say, well, you should prepare yourself. Yes, you should. But if you don't know, if you're just following the system of what they tell you, go to work, get your 401k, do this, do that, you're going to be okay. You get to the end of that and find out that inflation has occurred over those years. And this is pertinent to Africa as well, because the same systems, the same colonized systems. Inflation has occurred, but your rate of return on your investment has not kept pace with the inflation. So now your rent has gone up because you didn't make any purchases along the way. Or you went and took out them student loans on them kids that dropped out of school. And now you got to still pay on them student loans because they decide they want to go pop out 3, 4 babies and roll out. You still stuck with the student loans. Now you're dealing with the student loans, taking care of the babies and the student loans. Now you're faced with this reality. And that's what I'm saying, because people don't want to have these conversations. And, you know, again, like I said, I spent 20 some odd years in the church system. And so they're more concerned about scaring the hell out of you so you go out here and pay your tithes and offerings, but they don't want to equip you with the knowledge that you need so that you can be able to manage your money so that you can have the excess to be able to pay the tithes and offering with joy, the way that they say that you're supposed to do it. See, these are the games that I'm saying. You got people out here paying money towards these institutions and they can barely pay their rent because they have not been equipped. Some of them have been, they're just being stubborn, hard-headed, got other issues going on. But by and large, the people are sitting up here struggling, scared that God won't get them and all this other kind of stuff. These are the mind games that's being played on people. And the minute you try to show it to them, people shut down in their mind. And they say, I just got to have faith. I got to, and it's like, well, then wait a minute. Then if God gave you a brain and he gave you wisdom and knowledge and insight, and he gave you his word to be able to get in the study, then why aren't you getting in the study and seeing some of the stuff is bogus? Some of the stuff they're telling you is bogus. And so if you're supposed to be a cheerful giver, but you're stressed out and you're going through all of these hoops and all this other kind of stuff, you cursing yourself. So you don't have to worry about them doing it because you're stressing yourself out trying to do something you just can't do. I mean, that's just real. That's just as real as it is. And so as many financial classes that I've taught in churches, many of them that I've attended in churches, all this other kind of stuff, guess what? It always came back to money. At the end of the day, it always came back to it. Even when with Ramsey and all of them, always came, make sure you give them that. You're going out. And then the people sitting up here, children hungry, they're hungry, getting put out bad credit, all this other kind of stuff is happening because we're not having these critical conversations. Same stuff is happening in Africa. Same stuff is happening in Europe. Same stuff is happening in Australia, South America, Central America, Canada. Same stuff is happening. And so what I'm saying is, just stop for a second and take a look. I'm riding around Accra and I see all these buildings going up. If I don't stop for a second and say, what's going on? If it's so bad, why is all this development here? That's when your mind goes and says, let me stop for a second and observe. And then I stop and ask myself, why are people so afraid to come to Africa? What is it? What was put on us in our minds that we kept refueling that? And even to this day, they have programs in China to tell people, to show people how to invest in Africa. Programs, I mean, like major programs, and they come swarming in the planes and do what they need to do. And I even saw like a little flyer on the post, learn how to invest in Africa. I'm gonna go to China and go see it for myself. How about that? That's how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go to China and go catch the little thing and put it on the video so y'all can see it. I might wait till I leave China before I post it, but we might not get up out of there, right? But I'm gonna go there and see, exactly how they advertise it, because that's how it's done. And so all I'm saying for us is that we got to do better. I'm just talking to people who got some daggone sense and who can get their heads out the butt of all of these different systems. That's what I had to do. I had to literally pry my head out the butt of these systems, because I'm telling you, I think my shoulders was, it was a it was a tough situation, because I had been so indoctrinated with it, and for so long. You're talking about from the age of say 23 to 45. So you're talking about like half of my life. Um, Prior to that, I was, wild, out of control, and I was that guy. But then when I got to that point, and I thank God for being able to show me these things. That's what I'm thankful for, because my head could still be in the butt of the systems, and celebrating the systems and all of that. But when I got my head out of that stuff, and really, that's when I found out. That's when you find out where your real relationship is, because now you can step back, and then for me, that's when the scriptures came to life on a different level, because I'm able to look and say, oh, that's what that means. When it tells me to watch out about the different false prophets, it's not just about the jackleg preachers, but you got some other false stuff going on out here too. And when I'm reading and it talks about, and I'm giving you this just for a particular audience to be able to understand this. When it talks about the devil being the father of lies, and there's no truth in him, and so those things, and how the enemy will come to steal, kill, and destroy. And I'm looking at what these colonizing institutions have done and do. They steal, kill, they destroy, but yet we hold them up. We've been brainwashed to hold them up in high regard and saying, well, that's the system that God has put in authority, and I'm going to recognize that system. But then Scripture says, when it comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and these systems steal, kill, and destroy, how do I reconcile the two and say this is this? See, it gets convoluted at that point, and that's what makes people uncomfortable, and that's where people have not been able to answer these questions. I had a really good conversation with someone on the last tour, and so they understood, my journey a little bit more, and they were like, well, how do you navigate this? Because that's one of the questions that I receive a lot. And I said, I've navigated with the truth. I said, I can look in front of it, because see, sometimes what systems do, educational systems, will try to tell you that what you see isn't what you see. Religion will tell you, some religions will try to tell you what you see is not what you see, which almost have you, they're like gaslight you to make you think you're crazy. Like, you just smacked that person and you're telling me you didn't, but I just saw you with my own eyes smack that person. So you mean to tell me I didn't see what I saw? So I had to step back and say, I saw what I saw. I said, let me just, sometimes you see it twice. Sometimes you get it twice to be able to say, I saw what I saw. And I heard what I heard. And there are other people out here who are going through this and who are recognizing this and who are seeing this, and they're like feeling crazy because they don't know who to even talk to about it, because somebody will come to them with a bunch of jargon. And I'm telling you, it's on multiple levels. It will be educational, because you say, well, here's a good one right here. You come at them, this is when people get brainwashed with blackness. Say, well, wait a minute. Or democraticism or whatever. You say, well, wait a minute. All the city council is black. The school board is black. 95% of the teachers are black. 99% of the students are black. The mayor's black. The county executive's black. And all these people are black. And they all represent the same thing. So why do things stay the same? Can't nobody answer that question with good sense, without political jargon and dancing around. If that's the case, where's all that money going? Why are our taxes among the highest? Now, I say this for people in Africa so you understand this is what we deal with. It's coming your way. If it's not already here, because you all are fighting different governmental issues and all of that. And these people look just like you. So this ain't a black thing, it's a money thing. So then you deal with that whole thing. Now, this is somebody who got some sense, who's stopping and pausing and looking and saying, everybody's black, everybody's democratic, all this good, we've got all this money coming in. It would seem to me like these schools should be getting cleaned up. It should seem to me like these programs should be in order. It should seem to me like all of this stuff, since we all black and since we all black and proud and all of that, all of these things should be getting fixed. Then you come back and you say, and I'm breaking this down on different levels so you understand it, just so you get it, because it's happening all over the world. So then you have that. And then you go and you say, all right, I got a church on nearly every corner. Now, I had a conversation with someone recently, older gentleman, and he said, he said, you know, he said, I've been in church a long time. And he said, they tell us to come over to Africa and do missionary work. He said, but they don't need us to do missionary work here because they got whatever we're going to bring over here. So what is going on? He said, my mind is having problems putting this together. My mind is not processing this right. He said, I don't know what to make of this. And he said, I've been doing this church thing for a long time. And he said, the church is on every corner. He said, but the crime is still the same. The things are still the same. The people still acting like craziness in the church and doing whatever he said, it's the same. He said, my mind, he said, I've been doing this a long time. He said, I got some questions now. And so there are a lot of people like this now. Now, there's a lot of closet people, and y'all can share this, because a lot of closet people asking these questions. But they don't know where to ask them, because if they start asking them too loudly, then people start looking at them sideways. And then the question is, why do you care how they look at you? That's my question. Why do you care? You know, what they have to say. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, like blind people can't see. And then when you see them, you try to show them they want to stay blind. So you just got to leave them alone and let them figure it out. Eventually they'll come around. They stay in it long enough. I tell people all the time, you stay up in the butt of that stuff long enough, eventually you're going to get tired of the smell. So eventually, but you do, for some people, that's what they into. So that, I'll tell you like this, it got real rank up in there. You got to get away. So as he said this, I started thinking about it. Things stay the same at every turn. Incremental changes. Somebody tries to convince you that everything is not the same because it used to be worse, and this used to be bad back then, and this, that, and the other. I said, don't you understand trickery? Where's your discernment? Don't you understand how clever people can be if they want you to operate a particular way? Don't you understand that what they do at this point in time is take little things and to tweak it just a little bit to cause you to think it's changed? Don't you understand they'll give you symbolism to make you feel like you're making progress, but on the back end of that, you're doing something completely different? Don't you understand that? How many degrees you have and you haven't figured that out? As articulate as you are and as quick on your feet as you are, you don't have enough common sense to be able to figure that out right there. Don't you understand systems enough? Don't you understand that systems create behaviors? Don't you understand systems create mindsets? Don't you understand that if everybody's indoctrinated under a particular cultural system, that people are going to behave a particular way just based on the culture that they're in? So you have the education, you have the religious, then you have the financial. And when it comes to the financial, it's almost like if somebody has the ability to feed themselves, but they don't know they have the ability to feed themselves, then they won't feed themselves. They'll depend on someone else to do it. I'll give a good example. Jesus went to the man at the pool of Bethesda, and it was time for him to get up and walk. But was he able to get up and walk? Was he ready to get up and walk? Was he able to do this thing? Well, He had to believe and know that he could. And so if you don't believe and know that you can, then you will lay there asking for, please heal me, please heal me. But you have everything you need right there to be able to get up and walk. And for me, again, I look at the results. I say, you got all these well people, right? People who are well, people who are doing fine, people who are healthy, people who are strong, people who have money, all these different things. But they're fearful because someone in the culture made them fearful, because something happened that made them fearful. So they have the power to be able to make certain moves, but because something shuts down in their mind, they don't make the moves. Or because the priorities of the culture that they're in tells them to go wear somebody else's brand instead of creating their own brand, or because they're more caught up in image and looking a particular way for the gram or for the YouTube or for the Facebook or whatever. They want to look a particular way instead of actually building something and doing something with it. And so then they cry foul when stuff jumps off, like what happened at the Capitol back in January. They cry foul at that point. I got to get up out of here. I got to get up out of here. It's like, well, I mean, wherever you go, you're going to find some wrong. I mean, that's the bottom line. This classism is everywhere. So you're thinking it's racism, but really classism is at the root of it. And so you're thinking you're running to safety when on some levels you might be, because of just you're not dealing with certain cultural things. But if you don't understand what's really going on, you can set yourself up for disappointment. And so I see this over and over and over again. And that's why I keep telling people, I said, listen, what you see is what you see. Now how you process it is going to be up to you. What are you going to do with it? When I came to Africa for the first time, I could have ignored what I saw. I could have come back to America and acted as if I didn't see what I saw and got right back into my regular routine. But then I would have been disingenuous to myself. I would have been disingenuous to my family. I'd have been disingenuous to the people who have followed my journey and who follow me, who've known that as long as I've been opening my mouth over the past 20 some odd years, it's always been my desire to be able to deliver the truth to people so they can make a decision for themselves. And so when I came and I saw what I saw, I said, people need to see it for themselves. And if they want to ignore it, if they can't see it, then that's on them. But for me, I knew. And I will tell you, at that point in time, that was when my soul was at peace, because I was like, well, thank you, Lord, for showing me this right here, because my natural eyes couldn't have seen this. This is something that would have just, I mean, some of the stuff that I was seeing, I haven't heard, I've heard people say it, but to really understand it on certain levels was like on a spiritual level. And I was able to download it like that. And it was like, wow. And this ain't had nothing to do with no white Jesus. Let me just qualify that. It had nothing to do with no white Jesus, nothing, no way, no how. Fake white Jesus all over Africa and all over America still too. And this is what I would tell my sons. This is what I'm gonna tell my sons. If they go in a church or anything, mosque, synagogue, hut, whatever, anything, if they go in there and they see a white Jesus, they need to run their behinds up out of there. Because at that point, that whoever that is leading that thing is either they have not done their homework or they're running a con game. And when we have enough people, black and white, to say that's a made up image right there. That's made up. That's false. If we're going to follow truth, you can't follow that. You can't follow that false image. That false image is problematic. When you get enough people, and you get enough people in Africa saying, man, take that mess down. I'm looking at billboards, and you got the black people bowing to the little white Jesus thing. And I'm saying, I can't even repeat the stuff I'm thinking in my mind, because I went back to my hood days on that stuff. Because I'm like, and I'm saying they got people following them into this. When I went to Ethiopia and went into Lalibela and the churches in Lalibela, and the people bowed down to the imported fake white Jesus. It was like a banner they put up in there. And the man told me, I said, man, come here, listen, the tour guide, let me holler at you real quick. Let me holler at you. You know, that's the DC jump. Let me holler at you real quick. What's up with this white Jesus thing? And this is what he said to me. He said, the only people that ask about the white Jesus are the African Americans. I said, yeah, because we watched Florida Evans. And Michael had to school anyway. I said, no, I said, because we grew up with that mess on the little fans and stuff, with the funeral home fans. And I said, we know better. We know better. You can't fool us with that anymore. And so the reason why I take the time on my YouTube and all of this to talk about this stuff is because, again, this is the stuff that's circulating around. And this is the type of stuff that's keeping people hemmed up. And this is one of the reasons why I tell the truth about what I see. And when we can break free from the education stuff and educate ourselves and teach our children, when we can break free from the colonized religion and get past that, and when we can get past the financial stuff, then that's when life starts looking a little different. And again, you know, when I started, even a couple of years ago, when I started talking about this particular topic, there were people who unfollowed, deleted, whatever else you can think of, because I don't know what they thought I was saying. I guess maybe they follow white Jesus. I don't know. I mean, even Billy Graham told you that wasn't right. Even Billy Graham. So go figure. So and again, this is why you got to get past the need for approval and all of that. Once you get past that stuff and you get to the point of truly being comfortable with what your eyes show you, then that's a place of peace. That's a place where you're not, when you go to sleep at night, if it's your last night, you good, because you know that your eyes have not deceived you. Now, certain religious people and certain cults and all that kind of stuff will tell you can't trust what your eyes see. You don't trust your own understanding, but I'm gonna trust your understanding. I'm not gonna trust mine, but I'm gonna trust yours because you say that to me. You know, these are little code words you got to be able to kind of sift through and say, you're running a con game. You know, you being able to call it. Normally, if you start calling people on stuff, they dart away from you, and you keep it moving. You know, well, God told me that you such. Well, God told me this too. You know, you got to be able to come back with a God told too. You know, this is when this is why I encourage people. You got to know God for yourself. So when you know God for yourself, and somebody try to come at you with God told me. Well, God told me. And then they're not ready for you to say, well, God told me too, because they're expecting for them to have a closer or better relationship with God and all of that. Can I tell you how many times people have come to me and said, well, you know, God told me to tell you. And I said, well, God didn't tell me that. And they get the dumb look on their face. So people stop coming to me with that, because when you have a relationship for yourself, you don't have to deal with that. So that's what, you know, I know I've gone a couple different places with this tonight. But the freedom that you can have when these systems are addressed in your life is on another level. And so as I maneuver, I don't maneuver with fear, because I used to be afraid. Oh man, I'm going over there. They got witchcraft over there and such. They got witchcraft in American and in churches. And you know, what do you mean? Witchcraft is everywhere. What makes Africa more witchcrafty than the laughing people at the thing? They're sitting in the church, laughing and laughing and laughing. What makes Africa so, you know, Africa's corrupt? What's more corrupt than putting people in student loan debt for the 30 years with no way to get out of it unless they die or get on some payment plan that keeps snatching their money out of their account all of that time, overcharging them for a degree that's not even going to. You know, we talk about scams and stuff, but you know, let's really stop again and think about it. That's all. Stop and think. That's what I hope my brothers and sisters do here on the continent of Africa. I'm telling you, this crazy. The more that they colonize it and all of that, and the more that you aspire to be like the West, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by what you see on DSTV. Don't be fooled by what you see on that satellite dish. I see satellite dishes on huts. I see them on villages. I see them on multi-million-dollar buildings. Don't be fooled by what you see on that. Don't be fooled into thinking that everybody in America is living in the lap of luxury. When they see these phones and stuff that half the people have, it's on debt. When you see half the clothes that people are wearing and cars they're driving, half of it's debt. When you see people doing all these different things, and flossing. That's when you get one of them old school words, flossing around and acting like they all sexy and cute and all that stuff. Half that stuff they borrow from somebody else to throw on just so they can put it on the ground, and then they take it right back. One thing about that happens in America, which is affecting the world, is this illusion. And so it's okay to be who you are. And this is on both sides. This is anybody who's watching right now. I don't care what continent you're on. It's okay to be who you are. It's okay to be who you are. You don't have to live up to something that's false. And that's what much of this world wants us to do, is to live to a standard that is false. So anyway, that's all I got for today. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so inspired by being here, learning something new every day. Can't wait to be able to share this with our young people on so many different levels, to be able to share these principles and help them to be able to, when I get back to the States, I was telling my sons that I want to sit down and just talk to them about life and their transition into adulthood, and some of the things that they've learned. They've had their little bumps and bruises along the way, and I've allowed them to have their bumps and bruises. And so we're going to sit down. That'll be a good conversation for me and my three amigos, my three bambinos. I think bambino is boy, and I got a bambina. But she knocking on 30 doors. She'll be 30 soon, I think. Right? No, she's 27. She'll be 28 next year. And I'm not a grandfather. So I think I'm looking forward to that one of these days. I don't know when. I don't know who's going to be the first one, but nobody married, so I'm waiting on that too. So we're gonna see how all of this pans out. But it's we're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna talk about some of these real life topics, and I'm sure as I invite people into my conversation with my sons, it's gonna ruffle some feathers, because it's gonna be a real conversation. Father talking to his sons and inviting you in. And probably some other sons might, benefit from hearing this too, from some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So, all right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. And wow, y'all hanging. Wow, okay, I must have been really talking some trash tonight. I just realized how many people watching on all the platforms. So, anyway, I hope at least something I said caused you to think. I just want you to think. That's all I want you to do. Just think, and replay this. Rewatch it if you need to hear to replay what did he say that? I said it. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that God is giving me eyes to see and ears to hear and a mouth to communicate. And it might not come across the way that most people are used to hearing it. But if you go and research, you'll find out some of these games that's been played on us. And it's not just black folks, y'all. It's everybody. White folks, everybody. We all got it. So when white folks make mistakes, cut them a little slack, because guess what? They were trained under the same systems that we were trained under, and getting the same information that we were getting. So you got to understand this stuff was passed down. And so if you take a moment to educate them, or sometimes they educate you. And so I appreciate the people who, the people from different ethnic groups that recognize what I'm doing, and they understand that for me, there's no ethnic issue, because, and I tell people all the time, I say, white people helped to raise me. I had a black father who was absent, and there was a man named David Robeson who came and invited me into his home. White man invited me into his home with his family and gave me experiences with his family, while my own black Frederick Douglass wannabe looking father was out doing his thing. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like that. I'm thankful for that cultural understanding and recognizing of the differences in people. And that's how I can approach people and not be upset with an entire ethnic group because of systems that might have been passed down to them. But then I watch people within those groups who break out of that and say, hey, I just love you for who you are. And he had to correct me, and he had to chastise me. I never said you white, this, that, and the other, because you're not my daddy. I never said that at all. I was appreciative because he was showing love towards me, the same love that my father, who was absent, was supposed to show. So these are the things. This is why I can have these conversations so comfortably, because I have that reference point, and I know that there've been times when there was no one, and or there were people they could see, and these were people from other ethnic groups, and they could see what I was going through, and they came to my rescue. So that's why that chip isn't on the shoulder, but I can also acknowledge the realities of what we're dealing with. I can acknowledge the realities of history, and I can recognize the importance of teaching a different narrative, and being in this position. Lastly, I'll give you this. There's a grandmother, and she came to me. She wants to come on one of the tours, and she said we were doing a discovery call, and she was talking about her grandson. She said, my grandson, he needs to, he wants to go on and he needs to have the talk and everything. And so her screen wasn't on, but I'm listening to her voice. So I'm thinking, I'm saying, so I know this voice don't, she don't sound like a sister. Let me just keep listening. So she said, now, I'm white. I said, okay. I said, cool. I said, keep talking. So she went on and she said, but my grandson is black. And she said, he lives out here in the Midwest, and she said, I need him to have the talk. And she said, so do you think I should bring him on this tour? I said, sure. I said, bring him on the tour. She said, now, will the other people feel funny about me being on the tour? I said, let me tell you something. I said, if you have your black grandson with you and you bringing him on this tour, I said, if anybody has a problem, I said, don't worry. I said, I'll step to them. I said, because you could be like so many other people who families, white families who adopt black children or children from other places and then turn them into white children. They don't even want them to recognize their history, heritage, or nothing. I said, you trying to teach them and you bringing them to the dungeons in Ghana? I said, I got your back. I said, don't you worry about anything. I said, that's the deal. I said, so if you trust us enough to come in, then you come on and we'll make sure that you have the best time. I said, I know you're not trying to buy properties. And she said, I want to do some shopping. I said, I'll make sure you can shop and do whatever you want to do. I said, so if you do that for your grandson, I said, I got your back. I said, you don't have anything to worry about. And that's what I'm saying. This is not, again, I know black folks who give me more grief about coming to Africa and doing this. And I could tell you some stories about some of the most ignorant comments that come in the thing. I wonder if they're trolls. I wonder if they're like really black people, or if they're like white people faking like black people. I don't know. But for her, I said, hey, if we get more people like that, then we good to go. And that's how it goes down. But if we can't have these conversations, then nothing will ever change. Until next time, subscribe, like, share. On our way to 9,000. Peace.
Open up your eyes and see all the fun and mystery. Take an African adventure with Darren and Destiny. From the mountains to the shore,